Welcome to a very special edition of The Arena. My name is Greg Sindelar, and I'm joined by two people, two of my heroes. One is the wonderful Mandy Drogin, who's our director of all of our education work here at TPPF. And then as a diehard, lifelong Rangers fan, one of my baseball heroes, Mark Teixeira. Mark, Mandy, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, Greg.
All right, so Mark, you're the celebrity. Although, Mandy, you're a celebrity in some circles, right? So it's a little different.
No, I'm just a mom.
You're just a mom. Well, I don't know. You're on all these stages with the governor, right? So people know who you are. But, Mark, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, your history, and take us through your career? There will be people probably interested in that, me mostly, about how you kind of got started and got into baseball, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I grew up in a middle-class home in Severna Park, Maryland, which is a suburb in between Baltimore and Annapolis. Grew up an Orioles fan. Eddie Murray was my guy. It's the reason I'm a switch hitter. Eddie Murray's one of the greatest switch hitters of all time.
Absolutely.
And learned how to play baseball in my backyard and was blessed enough to be pretty good at it. And I got to the point where you got a college scholarship to Georgia Tech. I was blessed to get drafted by the Texas Rangers. And as a kid growing up with the nickname Tex, most of the men in my family.
The marketing wrote itself.
Exactly.
Right?
And some of the women, everyone calls them Tex. So we go to family reunions and everyone's calling each other Tex. It is a disaster. But, so I'm 21 years old, get drafted by the Texas Rangers. And I was blessed to have a 14-year career. And here I am back in Texas as a father of 3 teenagers.
So what's one of your favorite stories from your time in the majors that you can share publicly with our crowd?
Oh, so we could be here for 5 hours, right? I would say there were some really cool things that happened to me during my career, and to be able to play on a world championship team, to be able to hit a home run in an all-star game, to have my kids on the field at an all-star game. So my wife was pregnant with my oldest son. He's now 18 years old in my very first all-star game. That was in 2005. 10 years later, in 2015, all 3 of my kids got to go to that game, wear the uniform, go on the field for the home run derby. I mean, just an incredible experience. And I look back at my career and yeah, there was a lot of home runs and wins and losses, by the way. It's not all, fun and games.
I remember some of those Rangers teams,
plenty of losses, plenty of strikeouts, it happens. But the experiences that I've had with my family and my kids being able to enjoy my career and my wife being able to enjoy my career, that's what I'll always lean on.
Yeah. So what ultimately brought you to Austin then?
So this is my 3rd stint in Texas. I lived in College Station as a kid for 3 years.
Wonderful. Yep. I'm an Aggie, so wonderful.
And this is mid-'80s, 85 to 88, Jackie Sherrill days.
Yeah.
Going to all of the football games, all the Yale rallies, Yale practice, and just kind of that's the first taste of Texas.
Yeah.
Came back obviously as a Ranger. Lived in the Dallas Metroplex for 8 years. Mm-hmm. And then I left for 12 years to go live in the Northeast. Lived in Greenwich, Connecticut while I played for the Yankees and worked for ESPN. So 8 years with the Yankees, 4 years with ESPN. And I'm sitting in Houston, Texas, covering the World Series.
Okay.
It's in late October. The Astros are playing the Nationals. It's 75 degrees, sun shining. It's 35 and sleeting back home in Connecticut. And I called my wife. I said, it's time to get back to Texas. She said, all right. I go, we're going to Austin. And we always talked about moving back to Texas, and we wanted to settle in Austin. So we made the decision in 2019 and made the full-time move in 2021. So going on almost 3 years now back in Texas.
And I'm sure, some of the policies in Texas made it a little easier. No state income tax, all those other things made it a little easier, and sunshine just continues to help along with that.
No doubt. I mean, let's be very clear. I am a Christian, conservative, God-loving man who understood where the Northeast was going and didn't want to raise teenagers there. And I said, our community, I loved our community in Greenwich, Connecticut. Great place for young kids. I wouldn't want my kids to be teenagers, be in high school and be in college in that area. And the values that we teach at home were not being taught there. So coming back here and having the no state income tax as a bonus, but it was really more about raising my family in a place where you can go to church and be proud of it. you can vote Republican and be proud of it. You can have conservative values and be proud of hanging a flag in your front yard, or supporting police officers, supporting the military, and that's what we've gotten here, and it's great to be back in Texas.
It's awesome. Well, you're not the only athlete on the panel. I won't include myself in that because I only played high school baseball and then intramurals in college. But Mandy was a college soccer player at the University of Tennessee, the original UT. Right, is what they tell us. So, Mandy, why don't you tell everyone and share with us a little bit about your story and how you made it to Texas as well?
Sure. So, being involved in, conservative policy, like I said, I was raised in a family that try to give back to the community. My dad actually started an AAU basketball team with kids from the inner city. His assistant had worked for the Big Brothers Club, and he started it because my brother was actually the athlete, so the really great athlete, and saw that giving back to communities, giving back to those that are disadvantaged, particularly our low-income families that oftentimes reside in the urban areas, that was something that was very important to my family, was recognizing how blessed we were and that it was our responsibility to give back to those that were less fortunate. And that carried through college, and it carried into my career, where I ended up working at the Heritage Foundation and was working on an event called the Anti-Poverty Forum, and listened to a leader in the education reform school choice movement, Virginia Walden Ford, who was a low-income Black mother whose son was being recruited into the gangs of D.C. That's right. And she said, "This is crazy. I need to get my child out of," kind of like you said, you need to get your children out of an environment that is not right. It did not align with her values. And she fought. She walked the halls of Congress, and it was inspiring because I know, just like everyone knows, that education is the great equalizer. And so I became passionate about advocating for education reform, ensuring that every family has school choice. And then I had a child. And then I felt that lightning strike of love.
You thought you were passionate before.
I thought I was passionate. That's why I get loud and excited, because I know that love that you have for your children and you have for your children and that everyone watching has for their children, grandchildren, it cannot be matched by any government entity, bureaucracy, even teacher. We know and love our children best. So that transcends race, socioeconomics, zip code, any other factor. And so I'm passionate about ensuring that every single parent, regardless of income, zip code, race, or anything else, that they are the ultimate decision maker in their child's life. That is how we set children up for success. That is how we perpetuate the freedoms that we all enjoy today here in the greatest state, in the greatest country. And that's where my passion comes from.
Amen. Well, I don't know how you follow that, Mark. This is like the hardest part about TPF is I've learned, like, you always hire people that are way more talented and smarter than you, and then you just kind of get out of the way. And so I try not to follow Mandy usually when I'm speaking. But you have been a passionate advocate for parental empowerment as well. Can you talk a little bit about your journey there and why this is such an important issue for you?
I think it started because my parents were huge factors in my upbringing and how important school was. So I grew up with a mom who was a teacher, public school teacher, pretty much her entire life. I married a girl from Northeast Georgia whose parents were both public school teachers. And so when I signed my first contract with the Texas Rangers, understanding the teachers in our family, understanding how important education is, the first checks that I wrote to charities were all education based. Mm-hmm. Education and my church are the two things that I really support the most, and it's because of opportunity. And we talk about equality. It's not going to be equality of outcome. A baseball player understands that, right?
Yeah.
Athletics is the ultimate meritocracy,
yep.
But it's equality of opportunity, and it is extremely clear to us. Anybody that has spent time in inner cities, and my time in New York City working with different charities and a lot of after school programs and charter schools in New York, there is not equality of opportunity right now in our public schools. And education has an opportunity to level the playing field, to give poor kids in inner cities especially a chance to succeed. And so for me, working in New York over a decade with charter schools and understanding that you can make a difference by changing the model a little bit, making it kids first, not teachers first.
Yep.
And again, coming from a family that has a lot of teachers in it, I respect the heck out of teachers. But we have to understand what's best for the kids, not for the administrators and for the education system.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I have family. My mom was a teacher. My sister is currently a public school teacher. But we also have to understand that at the end of the day, what we're trying to do in Texas, right, is reach the potential of all 6 million kids in the state. And even in the best school, there are kids that's failing because it's just not the right environment for them. And how do we ensure that we are reaching and setting every kid up for success? And Mandy, kind of on that point, can you talk a little bit about some of the issues that we're seeing, right? You know, we're losing whole swaths of kids across the state, and we're just not preparing kids to launch into their adult lives based on what's currently happening.
Sure. So let's give some facts first, and then we can talk about what we're seeing all across the country, but even right down the street at the University of Texas, Austin, where kids are protesting for a terrorist organization. 50% of our kids in the state of Texas cannot read on grade level. Let's break that down to what that means. There are over 5.5 million children sitting in our classrooms. That means that over 2.5 million children right now, today, in our classrooms, and for the past decade, have not been able to read on grade level. 6% can't do math on grade level. TEA did an internal audit and found that just 19% of our curriculum is on grade level. 19% is on grade level. We have a crisis in the classrooms. The soft bigotry of low expectations really does exist. And so we have too many administrators and teachers and those that say, well, they just can't learn it, so we're not going to teach it. And this is a huge problem. But let's get away from the numbers, right? That's not the only story of what's going on in our public education. The value alignment is what is a huge problem. Week after week, we see on social media, in the media, stories of not just teachers and inappropriate sexual relationships. We're seeing parents losing their minds at school boards because there is literally pornographic images in their libraries. Or let's talk about the teachers that instead of having their class stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance like we all did in our public schools that we attended, they have their background that is a flag of LGBTQ, that stuff. I mean, stuff that has no place, and parents are frustrated. Or you've got privilege waltz taking place. We're teaching children to, take 2 steps forward if you have 2 parents at home. Take 2 steps forward if you live in a house and not an apartment. I mean, we are creating this mentality, this victimhood mentality that will stay with these children for the rest of their lives. We're creating this guilt, this completely unnecessary, ridiculous guilt among children that are now considered privileged. This was all very intentional by far left-leaning entities that really kind of started the march through the institutions back in the 60s, and they infiltrated higher ed. Again, when we talk about what is going on these college campuses, y'all, those are our kids in the colleges of education preparing to go out into our communities. Those are the kids in the colleges of medicine that are prepared to go out to our hospitals. We have a crisis that we are witnessing play out right now, an entire generation of children that do not recognize that hard work and a strong education and an understanding of what made America the greatest, most benevolent country in the history of the world, that we have lifted more people out of poverty than ever before. They do not understand it because they have gone through a system that doesn't have the value alignment, that is not using high quality instructional materials. And that's what we see in the education system. And parents have united. You've got celebrities like Mark here that are standing up and using their platform to fight back. You've got our great governor of Texas that has taken the state by storm, educating, learning, talking to parents. You've got so many leaders that have said, you know what? It starts here in Texas. We can see the crisis throughout this country. As goes Texas, so goes the country. We're going to stop it here, and we're going to fix it so that we save America.
Yeah, amen. Well, and Mark, obviously Mandy was just talking about the values alignment, all these things. You kind of touched on that earlier. How did you navigate this as you tried to find the right educational environment for your kids? What did you look for? What are the things that you saw, and then how could school choice help people who maybe don't have the resources that you do?
Well, I want to piggyback a little bit on something that Mandy was talking about, especially teenagers. So I have 3 teenagers right now. their default is mom and dad don't know what they're talking about. It's a rebellious stage. It just is. It's a rebellious stage that at a certain point in time in your life, I did it. I listened to Nirvana and had to, tried to grow my hair long when I was a kid, and my dad came and yanked my hair and said, "Go get your hair cut, son."
Yeah, that's right.
There is a rebellion that we have against our parents. It's just very natural for kids. When you're at a school that's saying, "Oh, that rebellion, that's because of X, Y, and Z," and I'll tell you how to think, how to act, and what, that is extremely dangerous, because there's healthy rebellion, and then there is, just completely going away from your family values. And for my kids, I want my kid to challenge me on some things. It's usually around the dinner table, and we'll be talking about whether it's a current event or maybe even something in the Bible. They all go to Christian school, and they'll be like, "Hey, let's talk about Job." And all right, was that, was it satire? Is Job a real? All right, let's have this conversation. This is a healthy conversation. Well, those are different than, "Hey, mom and dad, I might be this, and my teacher said that's okay, and so it's abuse if you don't let me think that way."
Yeah.
Time out. That's one of the reasons that we send our kids to a Christian school in Texas, because there are Christian schools all over the country that just kind of slap a cross on their school, and then they're still teaching this stuff. That's the scary part. We live in Travis County. I feel really good about our public schools. If I lived in certain counties in the state of Texas, I wouldn't feel as comfortable, and I would have to send my kid to a private school just so that they weren't being taught some of this stuff. And so when we moved here, and we realized that, my wife and I realized that Texas didn't have a school choice option. They didn't have savings accounts for kids. We're like, wait a second, this is Texas.
Yeah.
We obviously should be a school choice state. And so that's one of the reasons that I'm involved right now, is because I have the choice, because I'm privileged. I've been blessed to be able to send my kid to private school, but there's lots of parents that don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And so, Mark, as we kind of start wrapping up here, what are the things that you would, you mentioned Texas doesn't have school choice, so obviously there's that. What are the things as a parent you would like to see the legislature pass, the governor sign, to give you more freedom and options as a parent?
I mean, it's parent empowerment. It's the whole thing. And school choice is and educational savings accounts are a big part of that. But it's when parents send their kid to school, knowing what these kids are learning, right? Being able to be respected when they go into a school board meeting, or call that teacher and say, "Hey, Junior's brought something home. Can we have a discussion about this?" Rather than being dismissed or marginalized and say, you don't know what's best for your child. So for me, it's really about the parent empowerment movement, and educational savings accounts is a huge part of that. Yeah.
And so, Mandy, what is the legislature looking at? Obviously, we know what didn't pass in November, and kind of what all the details that happened there. But as we head into, we just had runoff elections a couple days ago. We had a lot of changes in the original primary in March. What do you think is on the docket to be passed in the 2025?
Well, I am cautiously optimistic that we will pass the nation's largest education savings account here in the state of Texas. As you said, we all just watched the runoffs that just occurred, and the governor said it. We now have, for the first time in history in Texas, we have a school choice supporting majority. But more important than that, I saw today the Wall Street Journal just put out an op-ed that says, "Children won. Kids won on Tuesday night in Texas." This is historic, because that's what this is all about. It's about fighting for the current generation that's in our K through 12 system, and it's about fighting for them and the next generation of Texas that will go on to, again, secure and perpetuate the freedoms that we enjoy. So I think kids won. I think our great governor won. And I think that all Texans won here on Tuesday night. And next session, we're going to see education freedom ring loud and clear here.
Well, from your lips to God's ears. So let's. There's a lot of work still to be done, as we know.
Absolutely.
We feel like Lucy with the football sometimes. We've been working this issue, Mark, for 35 years, and we haven't quite got across the goal line, but we're there. It feels like we're like on first and goal at like the 1 inch line at this juncture. So we got to keep moving. All right, so we have a tradition on this podcast. Last question, super easy, has nothing to do with anything we talked about. But you've been in Austin for a little while now. What is your favorite place to eat? If you're in Austin, where should you eat?
Downtown Austin?
Just anywhere in Austin. We can head out of downtown if you want.
Ooh, I mean,
this is like the biggest stumper. Mandy's getting. I'm going to ask her next, so she's going.
I would say ATX Casino.
That's a good one.
I love Mexican food, and it's a different.
Yeah.
It's not your like typical Tex-Mex. It's got a little different flavor to it. And I love mezcal too.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to say that on air?
Oh,
I
yeah,
love
absolutely.
mezcal. And they have
as long as it's not in your bottle.
They have
fine.
a long mezcal list. So that's my favorite.
All right. We know next time we're hanging out with Mark, we'll get some mezcal. But ATX Casino, I love that place. It's a really good one. Mandy,
So,
I'm curious where you take your brood of kids too.
I was saying, so y'all remember, I
Like,
have
who has the best
a
playground in
7-year-old,
Austin?
a 4-year-old, and a 2-year-old, and it is, it's Flores.
Yeah.
They have a playground. They have some margaritas. It's Flores.
Chips and queso. That's all you need.
That's all
right.
I need
That's
right now.
Awesome.
I'm not going for anything fancy. Just somewhere that I can shove them to that playground and maybe just have, eat with both my hands for once.
My kids are a little bit older now, but Flores, we spent a lot of time and a lot of money at Flores. That's a really good option.
Yes.
I will say, just to be fair, my favorite restaurant in Austin is Perla's. It's where we go there all the time. So if you like oysters, it's a good place to go. All right. Well, Mark, Mandy, thank you for joining us. We can get you on the road. You guys could be Eminem going on the road or something like that. Yeah, let's do it. Get out there with the governor. It'd be good. But thank you for joining us, and thank you for everything y'all are doing as just a mom and just a dad for the kids of Texas. So I think you're right, Mandy, that when we look at May of 2025, we'll hopefully finally empowered parents and children and unleash the potential of all of our kids in Texas. So thank you for the work that y'all are doing on that. And thank all of y'all for joining us and for this very special edition. Mark was the very first person to join us that was not elected official, but I think we have to get maybe more baseball players. Well, maybe we can get Eddie Murray next or something like that.
We'll call Eddie up, see what he's doing.
Yeah, we can compare notes on how to hit. That's always my problem.
We had George Foreman, not on the podcast, but I'm.
Oh yeah, we should get George.
He was up there doing an event too.
Yeah, we had him. He's a very big parent empowerment guy.
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. We should get Big George out here. He's a little bit more intimidating than you, Mark. So
he punches a little bit harder.
Yeah, that's right. All right, well, thank you all for joining us. Thank each and every one of you for watching, and we look forward to empowering parents finally in Texas in 2025.